people buy in when they can weigh in? Do people actually have room and space in your organization to be honest with you? Can they share their ideas? Can they tell you that that project wasn't great? They feel valued in a meeting when you don't cut them off. They feel valued in a conversation when you're listening more than talking. They feel valued when you specifically affirm something in their character, not just what they achieve for you.
Hey everyone, it's Josh Andrew here. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Conversations with Josh Andrew. We're all about leadership, having meaningful conversations, and getting just a little bit better every day. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Your support helps us reach more people and continue bringing your great content. Thanks for listening. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's get into this week's episode.
Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Conversations. I'm really excited to talk about leaders who are bought in. I think engagement is important. I think how we engage our leaders, how we engage our people who work for us, who serve with us, if you're in the church context, I think it matters. I think why we do that. I think how we do it. But again, I want to give you some tools here so that you can introspective look at how you're doing in this area, but then also how your leaders are doing with their buy-in. Because I think something that I've even been thinking through in my leadership journey is my honest responsibility is to be a leader, is to be who God has designed me to be. And there are going to be people who don't connect with me, and that's okay. There are people who aren't going to connect with the vision of the house. There's not going to be people who connect with the vision of the startup or the business that I'm a part of. There are moments of our lives as leaders where engagement simply is not going to happen. With that being said, though, I do think we can try our best and do our best to make sure that people are in an environment where they can feel known, they can feel needed, they can feel seen, they can feel like they're making a difference. So I'm going to give you a couple thoughts here on how to increase your engagement. And again, engagement's all about the people who are in the room. It's one thing just to continue to add your numbers, but it's another thing to make sure the people that are in the room are continuing to buy into the vision, because the reality is there's going to be perpetual states of being bought in. You can't just assume that one season of life they were bought into the next. You can't assume that they're going to be bought in forever. You can't assume that. We have to be people who can continually push for alignment and unity in the vision. So our first thought here is people buy in when they can weigh in. And this one, we're just coming in hot right off the bat because I believe servant leaders need opportunities. I think we need to provide space for people to actually be able to have feedback, to have ideas, to have opportunities to lead, to have opportunities to grow, to have opportunities to be who God has designed them to be. This is super important to me. This is important for me to facilitate. This is super important for me to look at and go, how am I creating space for servant leaders to have opportunities to grow, to stretch, to be who God has designed them to be? And again, a lot of times in leadership, your responsibility is to lead people where they don't want to go. And in hindsight, they're going to turn around and go, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful my leader led me here. Because that's what leaders do. Leaders lead. Leaders take somebody places. And again, a lot of times anyways, people will not get super bought into that initial long-term idea, just as much as God with us. Imagine if God told us where we're going to be in 50 years, all the things he's going to do through us. Potentially that might be a little overwhelming, and you are not going to want to say yes to it all, but you say yes little by little. Just as much as us in our leadership journey with people, we want to make sure that they have opportunities. And not opportunities to just keep them to stay. We don't want to just give people opportunities so they stay around us. That's bad. This is an example in church. I'm just going to continue to let them preach because if I don't have them preach, they're going to leave my church. That's a really bad mindset, and that's a really close line to manipulation. We don't want that, but people buy in when they can weigh in. Do people actually have room and space in your organization to be honest with you? Can they share their ideas? Can they tell you that that project wasn't great? That idea was not great. That idea is not aligned with the vision that they know God has designed. And that takes a lot of security as a leader. It takes a lot of humility. When I can say, I want you to weigh in on this. I want you to be a part of this. I want you to be solution-oriented. And after reiteration of this, what's going to end up happening is you're going to have trusted leaders in your life who are just there to make it better. It's not about titles. It's not position or authority. What it is, we're just all in agreement that the best idea is always going to win. It doesn't matter what your title is. It just matters that the best idea in any meeting, any thought, any trusted space, got to say that, got to overemphasize that, when people weigh in and have room to be who God's designed them to be, they're going to be perpetually bought in. So people buy in when they can weigh in. Number two, when people feel heard, they're willing to serve. You have to give your servant leaders a voice in the process. And again, this is just going to be continued perpetual state here of understanding when people feel heard, they're going to continue to serve. A lot of times what ends up happening is we play the blame game, right? Nobody wants to join our team. Nobody wants to serve here. A lot of times what we just need to change our language to is I haven't led them to serve. I haven't led them to show up on time. I haven't led them to want to be here. Because again, making sure people feel heard is not usually the default. Why? I love hearing my own voice. You love hearing your own voice. And when we walk into every meeting, every one-on-one, every conversation with an agenda, rather than ears, you are given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It's our responsibility to do twice the amount of listening as we are talking. When people actually feel heard, and there is a line to this, right? You can't just let everybody and anybody continue to share 50,000 different reasons why we're doing something wrong. That is cancer to a culture. I'm not saying just blabbermouth and constantly critique. I'm not asking you to be critical. I'm asking you to be solution-oriented. Leaders obviously point out solutions. They don't point out problems. But when you look at the actual engagement of your team, you look at the actual engagement of your guests compared to servant leaders, whatever that ratio is, I would venture to say the reason why you don't have a higher engagement is because people don't feel heard. And again, that's a big thing in the church. We want to make sure people feel heard. We want to make sure that people feel valued. But let's remove the church space. Let's just think about people who do a job for us, work for us in a startup or a business. When they actually feel heard, when your employees feel heard, I promise you, I'm an example of this. They just tend to go a little bit deeper. There just tends to be a little bit more passion, a little bit more grit, a little bit more get it done attitude or even mentality, because they know this is I'm a part of the business. I am not just working for somebody, I'm working with them. And when somebody feels that way, and I guarantee you have felt that in your life, that when you feel this way, that, man, I'm not just working for my boss, I'm working with my boss to accomplish a mission. And he believes that if I'm not here, it's not going to be as great. That tends to be a place where somebody is a higher engagement, that they respond to your text messages quicker. They respond to your emails. They pick up the phone out of off hours because they know I appreciate my boss. I appreciate the value that he's bringing to my life and the vision that he has involved me in. This whole thing is about involving people in it, not doing your vision, but let's do our vision. So when they feel heard, they're willing to be served. When they're trusted, they'll go the distance. You have to empower your team. Empowering always builds commitment. A lot of times what we actually do, we believe the opposite, that if we want commitment, if we see commitment, then we can empower. Most of the time, the best leaders, if you give them more than they can handle, what's going to end up happening is the quality leaders are going to rise to the occasion. And the leaders who need more growth area, they're going to stay stagnant. And stagnant is another definition of dying. That's not bad, by the way. That means that they're just not up to the par of where you are putting them. And that's just a level of awareness you need to have for the people that you are empowering and trusting. But again, empowering your team builds commitment. Empowering your team builds trust in them and you. They say, and by the way, when I empower somebody on my team to do something, I'm not micromanaging every single step. I'm saying, at the end result, let's talk about it. After you did it, after you actually completed it, then we can talk about it. Don't micromanage this. I promise you they're not going to be committed to the mission. They're not going to be committed to you. They're not going to be committed to the team because they know at the end of the day, you are micromanaging. And anybody who micromanages is not a leader. When they are trusted, they'll go the distance, if you want people to go to the distance with you, if you want people to journey with you, if you want people to continue to build with you, you have to trust them. And a lot of times what I've heard is trust is not given, it's earned. You cannot lead that way. Leaders, you cannot live that way. You have to give trust. It's not earned, you give it. And what ends up happening, though, is the people that lose your trust, it's because they actually did lose it. If you never gave anyone trust, they can't lose it. So you never actually have any trust with anybody rather than people who simply trust you and they end up losing it. And vice versa, by the way. Trust is earned in drops, dropped in buckets, earned in drops. So for you as a leader, if you want to make sure you have people in your life who are going to go the distance with you, I'm not saying forever, I'm just saying the distance. A lot of times that's going to look like you letting them be committed and empower them. So we had people buy in when they weigh in. When they're trusted, they'll go to the distance. When they understand the why, they'll go the extra mile. And that is our next one. When they understand the why, they'll go the extra mile. Transparency leads to stronger support. You have to be a leader who can be transparent with everybody and authentic with a few. A lot of times we're authentic with everybody, transparent with a few, but what ends up happening is you lower your parameter, or the people don't actually have strong support because they don't know what to support. They don't know how to support you. They don't know what they can handle because you are not being transparent with them. It's okay if you're overworked. It's okay if there's a lot of projects going on. It's okay if it's going to be a hard season. You just have to make sure that people know this. And when people know this, what they can do is they can say, I'm all in, or this is what I can do. But if you're not transparent, they don't know how to go the extra mile. They don't know how to go above and beyond, because that's where generosity lives. Generosity lives above and beyond, not the bare minimum. A generous person, by the way, is somebody who is committed to the vision no matter what. Notice I didn't say forever. I'm not saying be committed forever. I'm saying be committed today. But I promise you, if they understand the why, they'll go the extra mile. I've said this a lot of episodes, but when the why is high, the cost is low. There just seems to be a correlation here with you being able to articulate the why and people being able to be connected to that in a simple way. A lot of leaders call themselves visionaries, but they're really not. They're just ideators. Ideation is not vision. Ideas are not vision. Vision is what you see with your eyes closed. Ideation is what you see with your eyes open. Ideas are just practical. Vision is a download from God. God gives vision, and he gives you the brains and the smart and the wisdom to be able to actually create ideas from vision. Ideas are great. Ideation is great. Execution's hard. Ideation's awesome. A lot of times where we get stuck is in this place of actual execution. And if you want to execute at a high level, if you want to execute and have a team that goes above and beyond, executes at the highest possible potential they can live in, you have to be a person who's transparent. Because why? You can't do it all. You cannot do it all. And a leader who assumes they can do it all isn't a leader at all. Transparency leads to stronger support. And there's something in that we think that strength is found in us being able to solve everybody's problems. Really, there is a Messiah complex. There's a Savior complex in that. You think that you can just solve it all, and potentially you can. The problem is having specific people who are really, really good at a specific thing is how you have a great team. You don't want a jack of all trades. You don't. You don't want somebody who can do everything. If somebody can do everything, that means they're not effective in specific things. We want specific people being effective and gifted in specific things. Because why? Transparency, when you can be a transparent person. Hey, our sales numbers are just not where they need to be. And I don't know if I need what I can do to make sure that we get to that point, but we need to get there. And you just being transparent and honest, what ends up happening is people respect you more because you're just simply being a human level with them. If we can find common ground with the leaders in our lives, what you'll end up finding is they're going to respect you more and they're going to be bought into you more. There's something in the dichotomy of that, of us actually being transparent and honest with people makes them more bought into us and have potentially be submitted more to our authority. When they feel valued, they'll add value. Create a culture where every voice matters. Now, this one's tricky. The last sentence here, create a culture where every voice matters. Every voice does matter. There is levels to the depth and the density to our voice, though, or our authority, even if you want to use that language, that the president of the United States and just a simple Congress member, their voice, both of them matters, but at the end of the day, there's a final decision maker. Your boss, he's the final decision maker. So I'm not saying that we all have equal value, aka decisions, but I do believe creating space for people to be able to have ideas, to be able to bring problems and solutions, to be able to even share feedback, I believe goes a long way. It's kind of funny. I've been connected to a lot of startups in the last couple of years, I think somewhere over 200, and something in me always cringes when they say, we want to make sure that our people feel valued. We're going to give them endless vacation. We're going to give them lunch on Fridays. We're going to give them a new MacBook. All that stuff is really cool. They don't feel valued from that. They feel valued in a meeting when you don't cut them off. They feel valued in a conversation when you're listening more than talking. They feel valued when you specifically affirm something in their character, not just what they achieve for you. Something in us has a little meter that goes, they just care about my outcomes. They just care about my results. And I understand results do matter. Results are indication of roots of health. Absolute. And I'm not anti-results. I'm pro-results. I'm pro-KPIs. I'm pro-AKRs. All that stuff matters. But I promise you, if you make sure everyone on your team actually feels valued, they're going to add value. They're going to go above and beyond, like I said earlier. And if you can create a culture, which, by the way, creating a culture is just doing it. You don't need to have a 50-step plan. You don't need to have a meeting about it. You don't need to pray about it. You don't need to send 20 emails about it. You just need to be a kind person. You need to be gentle. You need to smile more. You need to make sure people feel trusted around you. And most of the time, that just goes back to you being a vault, you actually being a listening ear. You need to ask more questions than give answers. You need to create space for people. And all of that accumulates value. That you're saying, I value you as a human. I value our relationship. I value your infinite value from God and your value here in the organization. Because everyone has been made for a specific purpose. We know this. And if we can look at people the way God looks at people, even in the business space, not even just church, we will have people who get bought in and have a higher engagement in our organizations. You want to have a culture where every voice matters. Facilitate a space where people can voice their opinions, where they can voice their hurts, their habits, their hangups, their thoughts, their spaces. And I'm not saying be their counselor. There is a reality to this is my job, that you have a job and you need to do it. You have responsibilities that you sign a position description, 1,000%. And you can still create space for people. What does that look like practically? I would recommend in your one-on-ones, just creating space. And I think a lot of times what we do is we bank off of the, how are you? I'm good, or I'm busy. What would happen if you just ask them, how are you really doing? And just let them talk. Just let them speak. And let it be awkward. Let there be awkward silence. Let there be a weird gap from them actually introspective thinking and communicating and articulating their thoughts and how they're feeling, and you just listening. And make sure and this is something too to make sure you're absolutely doing, is controlling your countenance when your team members are talking to you. Something in us always goes back to the concept of we are looking at how people respond to what we're communicating. Potentially people are going through real deep things, and we know it. It's 2024. People are going through real dark, scary, big things. The economy, there's an election coming up. There's real things that people are nervous about. People's marriages are in shambles. We understand that. People's kids are going through stuff at school that they've never been through. So for us to create space for people to feel heard, I promise you they're going to feel valued. So potentially, you could actually lower your cost, your actual dollars that you're spending on teams, if you just created space for them to be able to talk. Because lunches are great. I love free lunch. I love it. I love free lunch. I love a laptop. I love merch once in a while. I love that all. I love doing seasonal parties. All that stuff is so cool. That's a byproduct, though, of having a culture that is fun and high engagement. Last one here. When they have a stake, they'll invest in the outcome. Involve your team with decision-making for deeper commitment. This is something that actually we've been implementing in our organization, specifically on the church side. I'm a part of 2 organizations. I'm a part of a marketing startup that I've been a part of since the beginning, and I've been in marketing for a long time, and I'm a part of the church. My wife and I are executive pastors in a church in Phoenix that we lead about 150 volunteers every single week. This is something that we've actually started to bring into the church space, that we have a layer of leadership that leads teams. We call them team leaders. What's been happening is there's been some peer-to-peer level conflict, and they're coming up to me. We're still 3 months in, so there's still some things where they're trying to just trust me as their leader, so they're going to go up to me, we can get it solved. I've been slowly integrating, making sure that they talk to the person before they talk to me. This is a real-life example here. What ends up happening in this is they actually invest more into the outcomes, invest in our church more by knowing my leader trusts me to make a decision. My leader trusts me that I have the best interest for the church in mind when I'm making this decision. And by the way, that just makes them double down, makes them go a little bit deeper into their level of commitment, their level of engagement, their joy when they serve, their commitment to serving people, their commitment to pastoring people, because I've given them a stake. I've given them permission to lead. I've given them permission to be a decision maker. You don't need to be the final decision maker in every single thing in your organization. It's just not healthy. And again, people will invest in the outcomes. People will invest more and more as you continue to make sure that they feel like they can lead. Now, with that being said, leaders don't need permission to lead. They don't. They don't need permission to lead. Permission is the second layer of leadership. You have position, which is I have a title, so I'm a leader. Then my leader has given me authority so I can lead. So yeah, that's the second layer of leadership, but we're growing. We're getting a little bit better. And I just want to ask you to make sure people are a part of the decision-making process. You want deep commitment, you want deep engagement, you want people bought into the mission, let them be decision makers. And I'm not saying for the majors, right? But the little things that for some reason you just want your hand in, it makes no sense. Have your hand in the big 2 things, and then everything else, make sure people feel like they can make decisions. Because if leaders are actual leaders, they're going to always think what's best for the team, not just what's best for me. So I'm going to read through these again. And again, I believe if you apply these today, you're going to see an insane level of increase in your engagement on your team. People buy in when they can weigh in. You have to give servant leaders opportunities to share their voice. You have to give servant leaders opportunities to weigh in, to speak to something, to participate it, not just spectate in it. When they feel heard, they're willing to serve. Everybody on this earth wants to feel known and needed. When I feel known, I know that my leader loves me. I know that they hear me. Not just listen to me, but they hear me. I'm just a little bit more committed. When they're trusted, they'll go the distance. Empowering your team builds commitment. You want commitment, continue to empower your team and let them produce results, and we can coach results, not inputs. When they understand the why, they'll go the extra mile. Never forget, everybody does not always remember the why. So don't forget that. The people are joining your team every single week. People are getting hired every single month. You need to continually, perpetually share the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we showing up to Loaded? Why do we do coffee? Why do we do a host team, not an usher team? Why do we do a kids team? Why do we do kids ministry? Why do we do youth ministry? If you can, and again, there is a level of you don't need to have clarity on everything to make a decision. No way. And it is imperative to continue to share the why. Last 2 here. When they feel valued, they'll add value. You want people to add value. You want people to make a difference. You want high capacity, high level leaders in your organization. Make sure that they can add value. And reiterate, you add so much value here. That is always in my language. Every single person, even if they serve twice a month on our parking team, I make sure they know, hey, when I interact with them, you add so much value here that literally when you're here, it just makes a world of difference in our experience. So create a culture where every voice matters. And then last one, when they have a stake, they'll invest in the outcome. Involve your team in decision-making for deeper commitment. When they have a stake, they'll invest in the outcomes. Give people the right and the clarity for them to make sure that they can make decisions best for the organization. I love you guys so much. We'll see you next week.